Joining me now, Lee Gallant. He's the deputy director of the ACLU's Immigration Rights Projects, who successfully argued for that emergency stay of Trump's executive order in federal court in Brooklyn Saturday night. Also, Gadeir Abbas, who's co-counsel for the Council on American-Islamic Relations, which filed a lawsuit of its own today, stating the executive order is unconstitutional. And Lee, let me start with you. So this strikes me as a big deal.
Absolutely. This is a remarkable, stunning development. I mean, these are serious people in the Justice Department who took a look at this, what we believe is a Muslim ban, and I think most people are now realizing it is, and said it's indefensible. That is as about as strong a statement as can be sent.
Look, what do you say to people who say, look, this is someone who's an Obama holdover, and this is purely political. She doesn't agree with the policy priorities of the President of the United States, but it's her job to deploy the federal government's resources in defending any law that she doesn't think is clearly illegal, which she does not say. She should resign if she doesn't want to do this.
Yeah, she can defend herself. She's a serious career lawyer, and she doesn't need my defense. But I would just say that whatever else it says about it, it shows that this myth being propagated that the president has the power to do whatever he wants in the national security area is simply wrong. I mean, there are people out there saying this is a no-brainer. Of course what Trump did is lawful. If nothing else, this sends the message they believe there are serious problems with it, and we certainly believe we will ultimately be able to show that this was a discriminatory ban against a religion that's antithetical to our Constitution and our American values.
So, Gadeir, I want to talk to you about that precise thing, but I want one more question about government lawyers here. I got to the hearing on Saturday night where you're the Eastern District.
Right.
I was not able to get in,
right.
But I talked to folks that were inside, and they said the judge was exasperated with the government's arguments, and that essentially the government's lawyers, this is before Sally Yates has weighed in, basically saying we're not going to defend this, we're having a very hard time defending it.
They absolutely were.
We're overmatched, essentially.
Yeah, they absolutely were having a tough time. And the judge was no nonsense. And she said to them very directly, tell me why there would not be irreparable harm to these people if they're sent back. Tell me why it's a problem for the government from a national security standpoint, given how extensively they've all been vetted. And the government basically just threw up their hands.
So, Gadeir, I'm going to play you what we have seen. The line coming out of the White House is the following. Obviously, this is not a Muslim ban because, 80% plus of the world's Muslims are not affected. Countries like Indonesia and Pakistan with hundreds of millions of Muslims are not affected. And that the grounding for this, the 7 countries that have been identified, come from something that was passed and signed into law by the Obama administration. Here's Sean Spicer laying that out. Take a listen.
These 7 countries were derived from what the Obama administration had deemed as needing further travel restriction.
This is 7 countries. These countries were identified by President Obama.
These 7 countries were identified by the Obama administration as countries of particular concern.
What's your response to that?
Well, it's really important to make the point that it's not all citizens from these 7 countries. Not all of them are banned from entering the United States. The executive order makes it very clear that Muslims from these countries are to be treated differently than folks that are not Muslim from these countries. And that is in the text of the executive order itself. Donald Trump, hours before he signed the executive order on Friday, explained that consequence of his executive order to the Christian Broadcasting Network. There is a preference that's being made for people that are not Muslim from these countries. And so what the executive order amounts to is a multi-hundred-word monument to the bigotry that swept Donald Trump into the presidency.
But wait a second. So you're talking about the preference that's given specifically for people that are of a minority religion in a country, for religious persecution, minority religion in a majority, a country with another majority religion. Clearly, in the realm of these 7 countries, that would mean non-Muslims in these predominantly Muslim countries. Why is that kind of preference not constitutional?
Well, the Supreme Court has dealt with cases like that where a municipal body or some form of government in the United States is trying to affect a single religious group and not use the words that are associated with that religious group. But the standard for facial neutrality is not the fact that they did not use the word Muslims and did not use the word Islam. The standard for facial neutrality is that they're not conducting a religious gerrymander. They're not drawing lines in a way that includes Muslims and excludes others, and that's what's happening here.
So I see your key point here. So what you're saying is that the law doesn't care whether you use the word or not. It can see what you're doing if you can meet that test. But the other thing, and I'm going to come back to you in a second, Lee, Stephen Miller made this argument. This is the person that we widely believe to worked on this, and he basically says there's no way this can be unconstitutional because the Constitution doesn't care about non-Americans. It doesn't care about the billions of people living past our borders. If the Constitution cared about them, then anyone could come here and we would have throw America open to the hordes. What's your response to that?
We're not, the basis of our lawsuit and the basis of other lawsuits is not an amendment in the teens and the 20s. It's the First Amendment of the Constitution. The very First Amendment prevents the government, through the Establishment Clause, from broadcasting a message of condemnation against one faith or another. And our lawsuit, all of the plaintiffs are inside the United States. Every American Muslim is feeling the stigmatizing burden that this executive order impacts on them. My family, my friends, the amount of alarm that's being caused, the green card holders, the people on student visas, these folks are going to be expelled from the United States because you have to renew your immigration benefits. You have to re-enter the country often to establish your immigration status. And not only does this prevent some Muslims from entering this country, if left standing, this executive order will lead to the expulsion of lawfully present Muslims inside the United States.
Final question here, Lee, briefly. There's some concern about a kind of constitutional crisis in terms of judges' orders being ignored by frontline Customs Border Protection agents, particularly at Dulles Airport. This is Congressman Don Beyer saying, we have a constitutional crisis today. 4 members of Congress asked CBP officials to enforce a federal court order turned away. Of course, Congress doesn't have the authority to enforce a court order necessarily, but are you concerned about that?
We are, and if they are purposely ignoring a court order, that is about as serious as you get. And if we find out there's non-compliance in the next 24, 48 hours, we will be back in court to enforce the order.
And would you look for a contempt ruling against people?
Well, I think we're a step away from that, but those are certainly things we've done in the past.
All right, Gadeir, Abbas, Lee Gadeir on the front lines of this remarkable unfolding legal story, which is just one part of the story.